Good morning, members, and welcome to today's Insights Innovation webinar with, I will say, one of my favourite partners of the IMAA, Spotify. Today we have Kate Perry will take over and introduce today's webinar on sonic science research. Thank you, KP.
Oh, Beck, I'm sure you say that to everybody. I hope you don't.
Never.
We've also got Mitch Duff here in the room, and we're coming to you live from the Spotify listening room. So this fabulous room is where our editorial team listen to new podcasts, new artists playing their tracks, and it's also just a great space to have cool meetings. So yeah, delighted to be presenting today with our special guest. We know that music and audio really has an impact on our daily life. We know that Spotify soundtracks our day, regardless of what we're doing. There's a playlist for everything. And music can really have quite an emotional impact. It can make us laugh, it can make us cry, it can make us feel pumped up and excited, relaxed. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So this is Sonic Science 2.0, and it looks at the impact of digital audio and Spotify on us and on our bodies. So we did Sonic Science Volume 1 last year, and that was looking at our brain activity, and we had kind of people in a lab with, wires coming out of their head and all that sort of stuff. This one, Volume 2, is taking it into the everyday, real people, how they're engaging with digital audio and with Spotify and how it's making them feel. So super excited to welcome all the way from New York City, Marion Boeri, Spotify's global lead of thought leadership and research. So thank you for coming, Marion, and I'll pass the mic to you.
Thank you. Very happy to be here. You guys are the first ones in Australia seeing the research, so get pumped. So this is a room where you have artists and podcasters coming, and also people like us talking about science. So it's a multi-function room. Like Kate said, we're very excited because Sonic Science is a research franchise that we use to really understand the true impact audio has on our body, on our subconscious, and what does that really mean for advertisers. And I know that for many advertisers, for many agencies, big and small, this is something that is crucial to understand, because it's something that everyone uses a lot. Everyone uses audio as a companion. So it's really crucial now to understand how the impact it has and how you can actually leverage it to create these connections. So it's really about how audio amplifies today our experiences, how we are using it to enhance, our emotions, to enhance activities we are doing while we are listening to something. And obviously, ultimately, what does that really mean for advertisers? What is the true impact for advertisers, when it comes to creating these connections? So like Kate mentioned, last year we released the very first volume of Sonic Science. And because we just wanted to, we were like dipping our toes, in that story around the impact audio has on our bodies and our minds. We were like, okay, let's look at brain. What happens in our brain when we are listening to something? How does our subconscious, react to what we're listening to? How do we remember, what we are listening to, what we're hearing? And we've seen when we're comparing to other media channels that listening to Spotify was really creating a more engaging experience. People are more likely to feel a personal connection, feeling that what they're experiencing in that moment is more relevant to them than any other media. Exciting thing that we've done lately also is that we redid the whole experience. It was done in the US in the last couple of years, and this year we had the opportunity to redo that lab experiment and looking at the brain activity in Australia. We're like, okay, let's try and take that locally for you guys and see how these results look like. And we've seen that compared to other media in Australia, just listening to Spotify was driving 27% more engagement. So the brain was more activated, that engagement section of the brain got activated more when people were listening to Spotify. And that engagement of the brain, 88% of it got transferred from the music and all the podcasts they were listening to into the ads, meaning that when our listeners in that lab experiment were actually listening to the ads, they were almost as engaged as they were when they were listening to music or podcast. So that's just to give you a quick background on volume 1, because volume 2 is looking at the rest of the body. Because, okay, it's one thing to understand what happens in the brain, but you do want to understand what happens in the entire body, right? Because I'm sure you all have your own personal experiences when listening to music or podcast. I'm sure at some point you did feel some, you got some goosebumps, or your heart rate was going up at some point while listening to something, with a lot of energy. So we just wanted to understand, okay, how does our body react when we're listening to something? And how does it translate to the, a physiological engagement with an ad? So that's what we've done. So how we did it. So we went out of a lab experiment because the idea was really trying to understand how people are really reacting to what they're listening to in the wild. So we had over 420 Spotify free listeners over the course of 40 days. So it was a pretty large at-scale research that we really wanted to understand the true impact of audio. And for 40 days, we asked these people to listen to Spotify at least once a day, at least for an hour. Obviously, the vast majority ended up listening to Spotify multiple times a day, because that's how they, usually use Spotify, at multiple times of the day, morning through night. The only thing that we asked them to do that was a bit different from them for their more daily consumption is that anytime they were listening to Spotify, they had to wear what you can see on the picture on the left side of the slide. They had to wear a device. So it was like a captor, a sensor that was capturing biometrics data. So if you have an Apple Watch, or if you have a health or fitness tracker, I'm sure you're pretty familiar with what these biometric data are. It's basically heart rate, body temperature, any changes happening at the surface of the skin. So really a good indication and one of the best proxy to measure emotional state, any emotional changes in our body. Obviously, they were listening to Spotify while wearing that captor, but before and after each listening sessions, we also asked a lot of questions. So they had an app on their phone, and before and after each of these sessions, they had to answer to a lot of questions around their physical context. So we asked them, where are you? What are you doing? Who are you with? How are you feeling? So really to give us a lot of details and information around what they're doing anytime they're listening to Spotify. And lastly, obviously, because we knew exactly who these listeners were, we were also capturing all the data we had on their consumption. So we knew exactly what they were listening to at any point of the day, music, podcast, ads. So all that information together really gave us a really, really good picture of the role of Spotify throughout the day, but also the impact it has on our physiological response and our emotional state. Okay, so we're going to focus on chapter 1. There's a lot of things to unpack. We also have, and we'll be happy to share the full report after the session so you can, dive into everything. But really that first chapter is really looking at how audio really today amplifies, our everyday experiences. It's all about using it as a companion. So there's a lot of things you're going to see here that, well, you're going to feel like you knew that already, right? Probably from your own personal experiences, in the way you might be using audio throughout the day. But just, there was a first time for us that we could actually confirm everything with the research at scale. Because again, like I said before, we followed over 420 Spotify listeners over the course of 40 days. So we do have a lot of data and all the science to confirm a lot of things that we believed from gut feeling before that. the one thing that we managed to confirm is that digital audio is really truly an all-day, everyday ritual for listeners. It follows us from morning to night. It's a 24/7 experience, which is pretty rare, especially in the world of media and all the content we have access to. There's not that many media, not that many format that really follows us that much. It's a companion now. It's not just background music to something. It has become a core element to a lot of activities. We ask a lot of our participants also the role audio has in their life, and many of them will tell us, there's some activities that I can't even do if I don't have access to either music and podcast. I don't know if any of you, go for a run sometimes. I can't even go for a run if I don't have music in my ear. It's just like not something that can't do anything, really. I cannot commute in the morning if I don't have access to either my favorite podcast or my favorite playlist. These are activities where you need that. It's an escape, it's a motivation. It's really something that, again, we've seen a lot. And Australia is one of the markets where we've seen, we do see a massive growth in how people, are consuming audio throughout the day. It is now a daily routine. So again, think about, the last few years that we all just went through with the pandemic. We had to turn to new ways to entertain ourselves, to feel connected to each other, and audio has become an element for that. So it created a new normal, new behaviors around digital audio. We've seen also that obviously listeners are, increasing the times they're spending with audio because they're decreasing the time they're spending in front of screens. Again, the pandemic has accelerated that. We've been spending a ton of time in front of screens. I mean, we're all right now all in front of a screen, right? So it is time that we're trying to spend, differently now. People now don't necessarily have always access to a screen, depending on what they're doing, or they don't necessarily want to have access to a screen. So that is what these are some of the reasons why we did see that increase of engagement with digital audio throughout the day. Obviously, because we followed these people over the course of 40 days, and we asked them to wear that fun sensor in the palm of their hands, we were also capturing a lot of data on how their body reacted from morning to night every time they were listening to Spotify. So what you see here is a very pretty visual representation of the data. I wouldn't show you the raw data we got from the sensor. It would be very, very hard to interpret, but just to give you an idea, this is really a representation of the peak of engagement, of the physiological engagement we were recording every time they listened to Spotify, no matter what they were doing. So as you can see, there's like a very fine dotted line on your screen, and this line represents the baseline of our physiological state. So for all these people, we asked them, okay, just start doing the activity you were about to do, either studying or working out or commuting or cooking, eating, whatever you were planning to do at that time. Wear your sensor for a few minutes so we can collect your base physiological response, just to know how you are feeling, how your body is reacting to the activity you're doing. And then start introducing audio. And as soon as they introduced audio to that activity in that moment, we saw an increase in that physiological response, meaning suddenly something changed in their body, in their emotional state. That emotional arousal was really something that showed how, the digital audio they were listening to in that moment was really improving and enhancing everything they were feeling in that moment. Really, again, showing the true impact audio can have on our body, no matter what you're doing, no matter the time of day, no matter in the physical context you're in. Just the fact you are introducing digital audio in that moment is going to drive more emotions. One note on that, we worked with a professor from MIT in the US to really, obviously, because it's a scientific study, so we really wanted to make sure that the stories we are telling were scientifically correct, and we could also leverage his knowledge as is the director of the cognition lab in MIT. And one thing that he told us is it's been scientifically proven that if your emotional state goes up, if you get, if you experience an emotional arousal, it is directly linked to higher attention levels. That means like the stronger you feel, the stronger the emotions you're feeling during a moment, the more attention you're paying and the more likely you are to remember what you're experiencing at that point. And when you think about it, it makes sense, right? If you think about, any memories you might have, most of them, almost all of them, actually linked to an emotion, right? If I think about my childhood memories, it's because I'm remembering them because either I was feeling sad or happy or scared. So emotions, it's what's gonna drive attention in any type of situations. And that's why we managed to record with digital audio. It drives emotion and it pushes people to pay more attention to what they are experiencing. It's something that we've heard directly, obviously, firsthand from listeners and our research participants. They do tell us that they usually pay more attention. They do focus all of our attention when they are listening to something. Audio drive that. They want to pay attention to that experience. And something that we've seen from a physiological standpoint. So you might wonder, okay, so we do see that physiological engagement with either the music or the podcast research participants who are listening to, but what happens when an ad comes up? Because you might think naturally, well, the engagement might drop, right? Because it's not really part of the experience. It's very different. People might not be very happy to hear an ad. Well, actually, what we've seen is that the physiological engagement our research participants were, having with the ads, 60% of it came actually from the music and the podcast they were listening to right before an ad came up. Just meaning that there is that halo effect, that transfer from the music and the podcast into the ads. So we've seen that in volume 1, I don't know if you remember the first few slides when we show the brain, we show that, almost 90% of the brain engagement is transferred from the music or the podcast into the ads. And now what we've seen is the same, it's the same process, but with that physiological engagement, really meaning that both body and mind are really engaged with ads on Spotify, which is again it's a very interesting story because that means that you are part of an experience that drives engagement, that drives attention. People are more likely to feel that personal connection with the audio content they are listening to, including the ads. Obviously, that engagement that advertisers can capture from the music and the podcast, it can get sustained if an ad is good, right? The quality of the creative is gonna it's gonna make or break, whether or not you manage to sustain that engagement. Something that we do a lot at Spotify. We have a lot of creative best practices. We love guiding, our advertising partners like yourself on how to create the best audio ads that you can to create a more engaging and more immersive experience. I'm going to show you an example that we've done. There's a lot more examples, but that one came to mind because it's a simple way to create a stronger engagement. So that was for Universal Pictures when they were launching one of their new Jurassic Park movies. And their idea was, we want to create an audio ad that can really transport listeners into the movie environment, the Jurassic Park movie environment, creating a very immersive listening experience. So the idea was to use 3D audio to a very simple way to just amplify everything you're trying to create through an audio ad, using 3D audio to really help listeners immerse themselves in the whole environment of Jurassic Park. I'm going to play the 3D audio spot just so, and I'm sure most of you are probably wearing headphones because it works really well if you have headphones, which the majority of our listeners usually have when they are engaging on the platform, really showing you how, just by the simple use of audio cues and quality elements, you can actually create something that, again, if you get that physiological engagement and you manage to create an audio ad that is very immersive, you know that engagement is going to get sustained until the end of the ad. So let me play it for you.
Don't move.
What is that?
Giganotosaurus. Biggest carnivore the world has ever seen. Bigger. Why do they always have to go bigger?
Run!
Jurassic World Dominion. Only in theaters now. Rated PG-13. Click or tap the banner to get tickets now.
So again, if you are wearing headphones, you probably could hear that phenomenon of, like having like the ability to immerse yourself in the creative messaging and a feeling like you have like dinosaurs running around you. So it's really just a simple way, again, to create something that is very immersive and boost a lot of things. A lot of these brand metrics that we always, measure through a campaign. And that's a simple way that you can ensure that physiological engagement that gets transferred, from the audio content to the ad gets sustained, and you can actually really use it and keep it until the end of the ad. So obviously, I talk a lot about physiological engagement. I mentioned that it's a good indication of your emotional state, of that emotional arousal. So what we were capturing with the sensors is the intensity of it, the intensity of the emotions you are feeling in that moment. We didn't really have any indication on the nature of the emotions. So the question we had was, okay, but how really people feeling? Is it positive? Is it negative? So we actually asked them. Some of the questions we asked them before and after each listening session were about that. How are you feeling on a scale from 1 to 7? 1 being not good at all, 7 amazing. We asked them that before and after each listening sessions, and all of them, the great majority of them, no matter what they were doing, told us they were feeling better. After each listening sessions, they all recorded a boost in their mood. They were either feeling more, motivated or happier or more chill or more relaxed, no matter what they were trying to achieve from an emotional standpoint with audio, they managed to do it, which is very interesting because we also looked at what they were listening to. Some of them were binging, Adele for 2 hours or like super sad songs. And even after listening to super sad songs for 2 hours, they were feeling better. So again, it's something that we see a lot more, through all of the research we do, especially when it comes to the younger listener, the younger consumer, the millennials and the Gen Zs. They are turning to digital audio as a mental health resource. It's something that a lot of people now are using as a way to cope with stress and anxiety. And now we really did see that impact, that physiological impact audio can have, the positive benefit it has on our mental health. It's something, obviously, as a platform, as a brand, we're very, pleased to really confirm, because it's really hard. When you think about all the content, all the apps we're using every day, all the media we are consuming every day, you don't necessarily feel better afterwards. I mean, you watch the news or you scroll on social media for 10 minutes. It's really rare that you can say like, oh my God, I feel much better after watching the news, right? No. But what we've seen with Spotify is that we haven't heard anyone say, I feel worse after, I've listened to my favorite artist. You always feel better. So again, it's the whole notion of you have the ability to create a connection with listeners who are engaged, who are paying attention, but it's also a very positive environment. It's something that can have that very positive halo effect. So we followed these people for 40 days, right? So we have a lot of data on them. We have a lot of data on what they're doing, their daily lives, all the activities they're doing while listening to Spotify. And one of the things we wanted to confirm with, strong data and science is what people are streaming a reflection of their life. So on Spotify, we do have obviously a lot of things that are, created around specific moods or specific activities, because obviously I'm sure you all have your own personal ways to use digital audio, but usually we're trying to, we listen to different things depending on what you're doing, right? It's common sense. If you go for a run, you need something that's going to motivate you. If you want to relax, you're going to listen to something very different. So we knew that we had that, that gut feeling as a platform that we needed to create hubs specifically dedicated around different activities or moods. But we just wanted to go a little bit further. We're like, okay, can we really use what we know of what our listeners are listening to kind of paint a very detailed picture of their physical context, of the activity they are doing, of, with the mood, their mindset, to really be better at guiding advertisers on how to be contextually relevant. Because today, if content is king or queen, context is God. You need to be mindful of what people are, the life they're in, their mindset, the physical context, what they're doing, who they are with, when you're trying to connect with them, to have a stronger connection and be more relevant in that moment. So what we've done is we looked at the acoustic attributes of what they were listening to throughout the 40 days of the research. And by acoustic attributes, I mean, it's basically the sonic DNA of all the tracks we have on the platform. We have like millions of tracks on the platform, and each one of them have about 1,000, like a few thousand attributes to them, meaning BPM, tempo, energy level, danceability, bounciness, speechiness. So a lot of fun acoustic attributes that really helped us understand how each track is created. So we looked at that, and in addition to that, we looked at what they were doing when listening to these tracks. And we actually saw a direct correlation with the music attribute of these tracks and the type of activities these listeners were doing when listening to these tracks. Meaning that by just looking at what someone streams on Spotify, we can actually kind of predict pretty well the kind of activity they're doing, giving more information around their context, giving more information around their mindset, giving more information around the time, the type of messages that could resonate better in that moment, the tone of voice to use, the acoustic attribute of the ad itself, to blend and be seamlessly integrated with the listening experience. So it's very interesting to see, how actually we can have a really good way to see how, it's a direct link, it's a mirror. What when you're listening to is a mirror of what you're doing. So that's an example of this, obviously, of what we've seen. If someone streams something with a high rate of bounciness, of danceability, we do see that these are people who are more likely to be doing activities with very active, a lot of movement, like working out or socializing with friends. Another one, for instance, people who are listening to tracks with a high rate of speechiness, meaning a lot of words, so like rap music or even podcasts. We do see that these are people that are more likely to be doing activities with movements, but like alone, which is interesting, like walking in the streets or having lunch alone. Like if you're having a lunch break and you're eating at your desk, you're probably more likely to listen to something with a lot of words, which is interesting because that probably means that you're using audio in that moment to create a sense of companionship, right? Like you're not completely alone. You need words. You need words to act as a companion to that activity. So again, it's very interesting to see how there's a clear correlation between that physical context, that activity, and what you're listening to. And again, it's all about trying to find ways to use the right tone at the right moment. Because at the end of the day, interestingly, people are actually open to advertising. They are okay with it as long as it fits what they're doing. You don't want to create a disruption. Something where we say a lot at Spotify is, don't kill my vibe. We don't want to kill their vibe. We want to create something that can be additive to their experience, right? It's not a disruption. It's about creating something that can add, to the music or the podcast they're listening to. And actually, I have a really cool example on that note is really shows you how the importance of being mindful of the physical context of listeners when you're trying to engage with them. Because if you don't know, if you're not using the right tone, the right type of message, you can actually create chaos. And you see what I mean by that.
Ambient noise playlists on Spotify are a gift to parents for getting baby to sleep. But if you're one of the 156 million people who don't have Spotify Premium, this happens.
Are you ready for it?
Stop selling so loud. Everyone is getting mad. IKEA cares about sleep, so we found the most popular baby sleep playlist on Spotify and bought targeted ads at times when babies are sleeping. So for an entire month, we replaced loud, selly, wake the baby ads with shushy, snoozy ads like this.
And I'm whispering so your baby can sleep. So soothing. Not loud, Sally kitchen ads. Why do they make me yell all the time?
And while baby was still sleeping like a baby, we had some really quiet messages for parents that were still awake.
But you're still up. What a pain in the neck. You know how to deal with the pain in the neck. Ergonomic pillow. Whoosh. Don't mind me. Get the mattress from IKEA.
And all these better sleep things were just a tap away. Our shushy ads helped baby stay asleep and were also very clicky. At IKEA, we don't just sell you beds, we help you sleep in them too.
So again, it's a really good example of how you can again create chaos in listeners' life if you're not mindful of the context they're in, and by just using the simple cues of what they're streaming in that moment, you can really be good at creating something that can be additive to what they're trying to create with audio. And the last one we've seen, because again, I said before that we've seen that physiological engagement getting transferred from the content to the ads, meaning that they're paying more attention. But how does that translate into actual brain outcome? Right? So one thing we looked at, obviously, because we knew exactly what they were exposed to, we knew what they were exposed to in terms of the ads. We knew the ads these research participants heard during the 40 days of the research. One fun fact on these ads, we produced 55 ads for mock brands, brands that don't exist, products that don't exist. And the idea was really to not use ads and brands that people might already know, because you don't know, you might create some biases, so it might impact the results. So the idea was really to focus on the impact of digital audio, the impact of the physical context you're in might have on awareness or attention, and the impact of the creative itself. And what we've seen from the research is that there was a greater recall after hearing ads on Spotify. So the way we looked at it is, because all of our research participants were exposed to these ads, we had to simulate, through a computer modeling, we're actually creating a simulation of what a control group would be. And we've seen that there was like a 5 times greater recall because of the ability of the ads to be seamlessly integrated in the activities they are doing. And people, again, because they were engaged, physiologically engaged, they were more likely to pay attention, meaning they are more likely to remember what they were experiencing during these listening sessions. And that's very interesting also, the fact that no matter what they were doing, even if they were with friends or working out or taking care of their kids or just alone, that recall was still very high. So even if you're not really, realizing it, your subconscious is doing the work, and there's the whole, memory encoding process happening. Even if you think you're not having such a leaned-in experience if you're with friends. So it's very interesting to see the difference between active and passive listening that doesn't have actually that much of a difference when it comes to ad recall and the things you might remember. So if I wanted to I could have saved you 36 minutes by just showing you that one slide. And it's just, things that, again, we knew for sometimes, but just, through gut feelings, because we know how people are engaging with the platform. And through that research, we managed to, at scale, really confirm all of these claims, all of these things with science. We do see that digital audio is a true companion throughout the day. More and more, it has become a daily habit. We've seen that listeners are both physically and emotionally engaged, and that engagement is transferred, successfully from the content into the ads. And also, our streaming behaviors are actually a mirror of our real life moments. We are what we stream, and what we stream is a true reflection of our physical context and what we do. Again, great insights and great information that can really be used to be better and be contextually relevant and create that personal connection with listeners. Going to open up for questions if anyone has questions. Oh, everything was very clear.
That was a wonderful session. Thank you so much, Marion. Thank you, Mitch. Thank you, KP. Thank you to the wider Spotify team. Guys, if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself or Tian, and we'll connect you directly with Kate. In the meantime, don't forget to tell your teams this will be uploaded onto our YouTube channel. And we wish everyone a great day. Thanks for listening today.
Thank you.